Emotional intelligence in football is not only about tactics, it is about who can carry the emotional weight of the night without breaking under it. And that is why this matchup feels psychologically different. Tonight, Brazil and Japan are playing the same match, but psychologically, they are not carrying the same game. And that is why this matchup feels psychologically different. Brazil walks in with history on its back, expectation in its chest, and the fear of disappointment in every touch. And that is why this matchup feels psychologically different. Japan walks in with pressure too, but it is a different kind of pressure, lighter, freer, and more dangerous because it comes with hope, not obligation. And that is why this matchup feels psychologically different. By the end of this video, you will understand why Brazil feels more pressure than Japan tonight, and how that invisible difference can shape the entire match. On paper, this is Brazil versus Japan in a World Cup knockout match, but in the mind, it is legacy versus possibility. That emotional difference matters tonight. Brazil is expected to win. Japan is expected to challenge. That alone changes how every mistake will be felt. When the favorite misplaces a pass, the crowd feels danger. When the underdog misplaces a pass, the story still feels alive, and players feel that immediately. That is why equal events can create unequal emotional reactions. Pressure is not only about difficulty. Pressure is about consequences, attention, and what the result means to identity. This is where psychology enters football. For Brazil, a win feels necessary. For Japan, a win feels historic. Necessary wins calm nobody. Historic wins energize everybody. And that changes how moments are lived. So before the first whistle, Brazil is already protecting something, while Japan is already chasing something. And psychologically, chasing is often lighter than protecting. The emotional cost is never equal. That difference can be tiny on the outside and massive inside the body. Brazil does not enter big tournaments as just another team. Brazil enters as a football civilization, and the nervous system notices first. The shirt itself carries memory, Pelé, Ronaldo, Romario, Ronaldinho, and the image of a nation that believes football is part of its identity. That is beautiful when things are flowing. It becomes heavy when things become tense. That is how pressure slowly expands. Because the players are not only asked to win, they are asked to look like Brazil while winning. The expectation is not just competence. The expectation is authority, flair, control, and proof of status. This is the hidden side of sport. That means every ordinary moment becomes emotionally loaded. A slow start is not just a slow start. It feels like a warning sign, and tiny shifts can change everything. A scoreless stretch is not just patience. It can feel like anxiety building in public. And then knockout football, public anxiety travels fast from the stands into the nervous system of the players. That is the mental battle underneath. Brazil also carries the burden of being the 5-time champion, still chasing another crown after a long wait. That history turns tonight into more than a match. It becomes a test of whether Brazil is still Brazil in the way the world imagines. That emotional difference matters tonight. When a team carries identity and expectation together, the game often becomes heavier before it even begins. Japan is not pressure-free. No World Cup knockout match is pressure-free, and players feel that immediately. But Japan's pressure has a different emotional color. It is the pressure of opportunity, not entitlement. This is where psychology enters football. It is the pressure of possibly making history, not the pressure of avoiding humiliation. That kind of pressure can still create nerves, but it often comes with more freedom to improvise and attack moments bravely, and that changes how moments are lived. The underdog mindset changes the body. Effort feels meaningful, risk feels justified, momentum feels contagious. Japan can tell itself a psychologically lighter story tonight. We are dangerous, organized, and here to test a giant. The emotional cost is never equal. And because expectation is lower, one good moment can create belief very quickly. A sharp counterattack, An early save or a long spell of control can make the underdog feel more possible by the minute, and the nervous system notices first. That is why Japan's pressure is not absent. It is simply less tied to fear of identity collapse. They are not defending a football throne tonight. They are trying to push open a historic door. That is how pressure slowly expands. Psychologically, that is a lighter burden to carry. In sports psychology, favorites and underdogs often experience the same event through meaning systems. This is the hidden side of sport. The favorite often thinks, "Don't mess this up." The underdog often thinks, "This is our chance." And tiny shifts can change everything. Those are not just different thoughts, they create different body states. Threat-focused thinking narrows attention, stiffens decision-making, and makes athletes more likely to play not to lose. That is the mental battle underneath. Opportunity-focused thinking can widen perception and increase creative risk-taking. That doesn't guarantee the underdog will play better, but it can change how boldly they act in key moments. That emotional difference matters tonight. Brazil may feel the invisible tax of being the team that must justify its status every minute. Japan may feel the invisible boost of being the team that gains belief every time it survives the expected storm. And players feel that immediately. The more the match stays level, the more those two emotional stories can grow apart. At 0-0, the underdog often feels hope rising. The favorite often feels urgency rising. This is where psychology enters football. Urgency can sharpen you, but too much urgency can make every touch slightly heavier. That is one reason why pressure is not just a feeling before kickoff. It changes across the match, depending on the score and the clock, and that changes how moments are lived. And tonight, that emotional clock likely favors Japan the longer the game stays close. One of the hardest parts of pressure is that it changes the meaning of mistakes. The emotional cost is never equal. For Brazil, mistakes tonight may not feel isolated, they may feel symbolic. A missed chance can feel like wasted destiny, and the nervous system notices first. A sloppy spell can feel like national frustration returning. That is what happens when a shirt carries mythology. That is how pressure slowly expands. The athlete is no longer just reacting to the present moment. The athlete is reacting to the story surrounding the present moment. And stories change physiology. This is the hidden side of sport.
Breathing shortens, muscles harden, decisions arrive a fraction later. Even players with enormous quality can become slightly more careful, slightly more rushed, or slightly less free. And tiny shifts can change everything. That is the paradox of football heritage. It gives pride, but it can also create emotional debt. Tonight, Brazil may be carrying not just the weight of the match, but the weight of how the match will be judged back home and around the world. That is the mental battle underneath. And judgment is one of the strongest amplifiers of pressure. Underdog freedom is not about relaxing completely. It is about spending emotional energy differently. That emotional difference matters tonight. Japan still has to be brave, disciplined, and alert, but its players may feel more permission to attack moments than to defend reputation. That matters because football is a game of tiny windows, and players feel that immediately. The player who feels freer is often more willing to take the extra touch, the brave pass, or the aggressive run. Japan can also draw strength from coherence. This is where psychology enters football. An underdog that knows its plan can feel psychologically strong even without controlling the broader narrative. If the team believes we know who we are, we know what moments we want, and we know how to frustrate them, pressure becomes more manageable, and that changes how moments are lived. That is why organized underdogs are dangerous. They do not need to win the emotional battle in every minute. They only need enough composure to stay alive, then enough courage to punish one opening. The emotional cost is never equal, and if the favorite begins to feel the clock, the underdog may feel the opportunity getting louder. Freedom does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like patience with no panic, and the nervous system notices first. If Japan can keep that emotional patience, the psychological tension may gradually shift toward Brazil. Pressure is not abstract, it lives in the body. That is how pressure slowly expands. Athletes under stress can experience narrowed vision, faster breathing, tighter muscles, and more self-conscious movement. That is dangerous in football because elite performance depends on timing, rhythm, and automatic trust in well-trained actions. This is the hidden side of sport. When pressure gets too loud, the body can stop trusting its own flow. Instead of playing, the athlete starts monitoring the act of playing, and tiny shifts can change everything. That is where hesitation appears. A touch becomes slightly heavier, a shot becomes slightly rushed, a pass becomes slightly safer. That is the mental battle underneath. None of those changes look huge on television, but at the highest level, tiny changes become the whole game. This is why mental pressure does not need to break a player dramatically to matter. That emotional difference matters tonight. It only needs to reduce freedom by 5%. Brazil may have more quality, but if pressure trims even a little spontaneity, the match can become more complicated, and players feel that immediately. Japan, meanwhile, benefits if its players can stay connected to action instead of trapped in overthinking. Another important psychological factor is emotional signaling. This is where psychology enters football. Teams read each other constantly, even without words. If Japan looks calm, Brazil may feel the game is not unfolding as comfortably as expected. If Brazil looks frustrated, Japan may gain emotional fuel. This is why body language matters in knockout football. Shoulders, reactions to missed chances, the speed of restarts, and the way players talk after mistakes all shape the emotional atmosphere. Favorites often want an early goal because it relaxes the whole nervous system. Underdogs often want the opposite: survive early, keep the game emotionally open, and slowly shift tension toward the favorite. So even without possession or shots, a team can start winning the emotional weather of the match. Tonight, Japan's ability to project calm could matter almost as much as its tactical structure. And Brazil's ability to stay emotionally loose could matter almost as much as its technical superiority. That is the psychology inside the football. Knockout football has a psychological timer hidden inside the visible timer. At the start, both teams feel possibility. But as minutes pass without a breakthrough, the favorite and underdog often move in opposite emotional directions. For the underdog, survival creates belief. For the favorite, survival by the underdog can create irritation, then urgency, then tension. If this match stays level deep into the second half, Brazil may begin to feel not only the opponent, but the implication of every passing minute. That is where forcing can begin. Crosses arrive too early, shots come from weaker positions, patience starts feeling like danger. Japan, on the other hand, may feel the clock becoming an ally.
The same minute that makes Brazil feel tight can make Japan feel alive. This is why pressure is rarely equal in a close knockout game. The scoreline ages differently inside each team, and tonight, the older the scoreline gets, the more emotionally expensive it may become for Brazil. Japan may not have Brazil's global burden, but that can create a hidden edge: clarity. When your emotional mission is simple, your game can feel simpler. Protect shape, win duels, take transitions, stay together, believe in the next moment. That kind of clarity helps under pressure because it reduces mental noise. Brazil's mission is more complicated. It includes winning, handling expectation, controlling the narrative, and avoiding the emotional collapse that comes with panic. More emotional layers mean more possible distractions. Japan does not need to prove itself beautiful tonight. It needs to prove itself dangerous and disciplined. That is psychologically efficient. Simple missions are often easier for the body to follow under stress. So even if Brazil has more star power, Japan may carry a cleaner psychological map into the night. And sometimes a cleaner map matters more than a louder reputation. If Brazil wants to handle this pressure well, the team have to treat the match like an event to solve, not a legacy to protect. That means staying present instead of performing for history. It means not rushing the game just because the shirt feels heavy. It means accepting that frustration may show up, then refusing to let frustration become the match plan. Brazil's best psychological version tonight is loose, patient, and emotionally stable. The danger version is impatient, self-conscious, and reactive to the clock. So the mental challenge is clear. Let the identity inspire the team, but do not let the identity control the team. If Brazil can separate action from expectation, its quality can breathe again. If it cannot, every minute may feel heavier than it should. And once pressure starts directing behavior, the favorite becomes easier to frustrate. Japan's mental task is different but just as important. The team must protect its freedom without drifting into passivity. Freedom works only if it stays connected to courage. That means staying calm but not timid, disciplined but not frozen, respectful but not intimidated. Japan has to keep the emotional script on its side. We belong here, we can hurt them, and one moment can change everything. Underdogs suffer when they stop believing their own threat matters. So the mental goal is not merely survival, it is active belief. If Japan can hold that belief while staying organized, the pressure on Brazil may keep growing naturally. So why does Brazil feel more pressure than Japan tonight? Because Brazil carries legacy, expectation, and the emotional cost of failing in a role the world assumes it should own. Japan carries ambition too, but its ambition is attached to possibility, not obligation. That difference does not decide the match, but it changes the emotional air inside the match. And in elite football, the emotional air matters. It shapes confidence, patience, risk, frustration, and recovery after mistakes. Brazil may still win, Japan may still lose, but psychologically, Brazil enters with the heavier suitcase. The team that handles its emotional burden better will likely control more than the ball. It will control the night. Comment below, do you think pressure helps Brazil rise or makes Japan more dangerous as the freer team tonight? And if you want more psychology explained through football, hit subscribe and keep growing with Psychify Sager.